Welcome, folks. Just waiting for a couple more people to join, and also waiting for our presenter Amit Kumar to join. Amit is here, our presenter for today. So let me make Amit the presenter. Yeah, Amit is already the panelist, so let me make him the presenter. Hi, Amit. Good evening.
Hi Vivek, am I audible?
Yes, perfectly. Can you please speak a few sentences so we can do a quick audio check?
I am an AI intern with CellStrat, and today's session will be on image segmentation of cells nuclei using UNet. Alright. So, Kumar, I am an AI intern with CellStrat. So today's session is on image segmentation of cells nuclei using UNet. But before that, we will look into one of the CellStrat products, which is diabetic retinopathy. So let me quickly open the application. So this is CellStat page, and this is the diabetic retinopathy application. So what this is, just giving a brief of diabetic retinopathy. Diabetic is a very prevalent disease in India and across the world. So this condition of diabetes, if left unchecked, it affects the human body in a lot of ways. And one way it affects is it causes renal failure. So what happens there is that blood vessels are formed on the surface of the eye or the retina, and which can lead to blurry vision, and ultimately if left unchecked it could result in permanent blindness. So what our application over here does is, let me quickly start the session, and let me upload an image. So the image that I'm going to upload will be a image of an eye scan. Now this image is of a person who is suffering with diabetic retinopathy. So let me try to upload this. Now I'm predicting. All right, so now I'll end the session, and I will check the result over here. So it tells me that the probability of the person suffering with PDR is 86.53%, which is relatively good. So this is one of the products of CellStrat that we have come up with, and which has garnered a lot of interest among people. So do let me know if there is any questions on that part. All right, so now I'll be moving to today's topic, which is image segmentation of cells nuclei using UNet. So why we need to segment cells nuclei? The thing is, in order to, okay, I have a question here. What is the data source for DR model training? So this data source was a Kaggle data source that we had used, but the number of images was less. So then we did some data augmentation, and we had trained the model on more than 100K data set. So yeah, I hope that answers. So coming to today's topic of cells nuclei, why do we need to do image segmentation for cells nuclei? So one quick way to understand is that this is of primary importance in the drug trial industry. What happens over here is that a lot of different chemical batches are prepared, which is applied to different type of sick cells batches, and then we need to observe the behavior of the chemicals on the 6 cells. So there are robots which exist which can prepare the chemicals and which can prepare the batches. But in order to observe or analyze the healthy cells, we would need some kind of analysis, and this is what we do in terms of image segmentation. We can, for example, in this case, we are probably we are looking at the nucleus over here. We will try to segment the nucleus from an image, and uh, but there are other use cases as well where we can try to find out endoplasmic reticulum, mitochondria, Golgi bodies, nuclei. So all different parts of the cells also we can try to image segment. And this data set or this example or task is from a data science ball competition, which was started in 2018. This is from Kaggle actually. All right, so just giving a brief of what the cell's nuclei looks like. We have a nucleus, ribosomes, and mitochondria, all the different parts over here. Our focus or interest over here is nucleus. So looking at a data set, now the data set comprises of image IDs. There are two folders in the data set as downloaded from Kaggle. One is the test, another is a train. So in the train data set, we will have files like this, which is actually image IDs. Now, if we open this file, we will find two folders inside it. One is images, which will have one image, something like this, where these are individual nucleus that we see, and then there'll be a mask which will be actually the label. So suppose there are like 20 nuclei or 20 nuclei images over here, then we'll have 20 different frames over here, and each frame will contain one nucleus. So this is a bit tedious way of representing the labels. Actually, they could have given it in one particular image, but this gives us an extra effort of assimilating all of this into a single image as part of pre-processing. But nothing specific. I mean, this could have been done in one image only. So this is how the dataset has been provided. Next is coming to UNet. So UNet is a autoencoder based convolutional neural network architecture, and it is primarily used in image segmentation for medical image segmentation. I have some questions. There were two competitions in Kaggle 2015 and 2019. Okay, so this data set is primarily from 2018 competition, and this was actually set up by Broad Institute of Harvard and MIT in 2018, and UNet was the winning solution for that particular competition. So okay, there's some questions with respect to the application. What technology have been used to develop the UI? So this is React JS based. All right, so moving back to the unit architecture. So this part over here that we see is known as the encoder. This is the bottleneck, and this part is the decoder over here. So what we see is that we pass an input image of this particular size, and then there are two convolutional layers, and then there are channels over here. We do a max pooling. So what's happening? What is the size of the image is decreasing, but the number of channels is gradually increasing. So what we see here is that there are 4 blocks for each encoder over here, and then there is bottleneck, and same we have 4 blocks over here for decoder as well. One important information is that while the image is being convoluted, we get a lot of rich contextual information about an image. Like when the size is reduced, we can probably figure out what it is. May not be able to figure out where it is, but definitely what it is. So that part of what it is actually is fed over here to the decoder part. And since this is upsampling, which this definitely helps us in localizing the image, because we have already figured out from here that what we are trying to localize. And since we are upsampling over here, this gives us a good information, and that's why if you see over here, this part, the white part, is the information getting concatenated. One is the upsampled part over here, whereas the white part is the part where we are getting the information from the respective layer in our encoder. This part will be further clear once we go through the code demo, because we have actually put different variable names, so it will be very clear to understand. So these are the different arrow marks or symbols which defines the different operations that are happening over here. So we are having we are performing convolutional 3 into 3. These are 3 into 3 convolutional networks, and then max pooling 2 into 2. We are doing an up convolution, and then we are doing a final 1 into 1 convolution, and we are generating the output segmentation map. Okay, so this is basically the architecture that we just went through. There is 3 into 3 convolution layer, and then there is activation function. Basically, ReLU has been applied, and then we are doing a max pooling. There's a bottleneck layer where we are applying 2 convolution layer. There's no max pooling or no pooling over there. Next is our expansion layer or expanding layer, which is the decoder layer. And here we have deconvolutional layer with stride of 2, and then it's followed up by 3 into 3 convolutional layer with the activation function as ReLU and batch normalization, which we just discussed. So this is actually known as the contraction part, because the size of the image actually is reducing and the channel size is increasing. Where on the other side, this is the expansion part, where once we have the size reduced, again we go back and increase. We have got the contextual information from here. Now we upsample from here, so the size of the image is increasing, but the filters will gradually decrease, or the channel size with channels will gradually decrease over here. Correct. So there's one question over here. I understand mask RCNN is also used for segmentation. That's a very good point, actually. For this particular competition itself, mask RCNN was also used. Even you can search, there's a paper also for mask RCNN cell nuclei image segmentation. So I was also trying that. That was some time back. How to whether which one is better in terms of image segmentation for this particular challenge. Is it a mask RCNN or UNet? Uh, Both were equally good. I mean, I didn't find much of a difference in terms of result. So, but yeah, even this challenge has been attempted by both. UNet won the competition, but I think the solution with RCNN got 5th position. So UNet basically follows this autoencoder based architecture. I don't think mask RCNN has. I think there is something called region of interest, if I'm correct. Uh, so architecture wise, it is different, but result wise, for this particular challenge, I am not sure if there's much of a difference. At least I didn't see much of a difference. But yeah,
For different data sets, different algos may perform differently, right? So you have to try for different data sets. Some algos may outperform each other, right? So we cannot set a rule. So it might vary based on the data set. For biomedical, UNet is the most popular segmentation algorithm because of the fine grainness of the biomedical images and satellite imagery. And for this cell nuclei or biomedical imaging, I think UNet is best in class. MaskR CNN is more popular for instance level segmentation, which this UNet cannot do. Instance level means different nuclei are marked with different color coding. Here, all the nuclei are marked with same color coding, so that's semantic segmentation. But yeah, as I said, Mask RCNN can also solve this one, but not sure if it will outperform on accuracy side of things. Just want to add that. That's all.
so next, moving to the advantages of using UNet. Now, we talked about how we are getting the context of the image. The context basically means the what of the image, what we are trying to segment. And once we have, because naturally, if an image is big enough, it will be very difficult to figure out things over there. But gradually, if we reduce the size of the image, we can probably understand what that image is about. But yeah, localizing it or coming up with a boundary around it will be difficult, but that problem is solved because of the we are using the upsampling or up convolution over here. So both hand in hand helps us to localize the object in the image. In this case, it's actually nuclei. And there are no dense layers, so images of different sizes can be used as input. Since the only parameter to learn on convolutionally are the kernels, and the size of the kernels are not dependent on the input image size. So this gives us a lot of flexibility in the architecture. And the third point is that basically we have to use data augmentation over here, because as in medical or biomedical field, the number of images is comparatively less. So we have to try to generate more using data augmentation. We'll go through different strategies of that later. All right. So how do we train U-Net? So we use a cross entropy loss, which we can see over here, which is comprised of two parts. One is the W of X, which is a weight map, and this particular part over here is known as the maximum function. This is basically the softmax function. So we can see a softmax implemented over here, where A is the activation, K is the feature channel, and X is the pixel position, and which is divided by sum of this K over here is all the classes, since we are doing a softmax classification over here. The pixel position, so activation of pixel position X over all the different classes, we'll get the sum and we'll divide with one particular pixel position activation. So if this is maximum, then this particular value, which is our maximum function, will go towards 1. If this is any value other than maximum, then this value will be definitely less than 0. And once this particular value, which is our approximated maximum function, is less than 0, that we will calculate the deviation from 1 with respect to the loss function, which is our cross entropy loss over here. And as far as the Wx part is concerned, W of X, which is the weight map, so we'll just quickly go through how that is calculated. So this is the equation for this, where Wc of W subscript X is the weight map to balance class frequencies. Now we are talking about class frequencies because in softmax there could be different classes here, and there could be pixels which can fall into the same classes. So that is one thing that we are trying to track over here. Other than that, W0 is our initial weight that we are giving, and D1x is the distance to the border of the nearest cell, and for this particular cell X, what is the distance to the nearest cell, and for the same cell, what is the difference to the second nearest cell. So these are some things. Sigma over here is the number of cells that are number of pixels that are considered. So in U-Net paper, if we see, they have used these two as hyperparameters. W0 they have initialized as 10, and sigma they have initialized as 5 pixels. So again, probably that can be changed, but they got their best results with that. So if you look into this figure, things would be more clearer. Like this is the original image, and this is the ground truth that we see. Over here, we can see that some of the images, some of the nucleus or objects are of the same color, which means that they belong to the same class. And next, what we do is that we generate the segmentation mask, and over here we apply pixel-wise loss. And yeah, so this is very prominent over here. The different uh, objects or nucleus and the boundaries is also very prominent.
Yes, Amit, I had a question here. This intuition of weight is not clear to me. Maybe I missed something. So why weight is defined the way it is, and why it's multiplied to probability in the previous slide? Because maximum likelihood estimation or log loss, as we say, that is just maximized directly without multiplying with any W vector. So this has
Yeah,
some
okay.
custom mathematical logic going on compared to a regular log loss likelihood, or negative of log loss likelihood is what we try to maximize generally. So this has some custom maths logic going on compared to a negative loss log likelihood maximization logic which we are accustomed to. What is this weight thing? What is it implying? Some distance matrix is being calculated, or we just accept
Okay.
on the face of it based on the paper?
Okay. So, I mean, first thing that you asked me was about the weight, and second thing you asked about the distance metric. So, distance part is pretty clear, I believe. But yeah, I can definitely understand the weight part is a bit complicated, like why we are multiplying it with the log probability likelihood. This let
So
me
you're
give
adding
just
two
give me.
weights. One is the class weight WC, and second one is something based on the distance metric. So WC is the weight class. Is WC W0 learned parameters or hard-coded hyperparameters?
WC is W naught is is a hard coded one. If you see over here in this experiment, we set W naught, which is the initial weight, to 10, and
Mhm,
so
mhm.
they have using it as hyperparameters over here. But WC is something that we are getting from the image. So this is learned, whereas the other two are hard coded.
Okay, okay. So there is some morphological operation they are referring to. Separation border is computed. So there is some custom mathematical intuition behind this, which is just stated but not explained, which is fine. It's all right. So there is some custom mathematical theory behind this morphological operation, they call it, but they haven't expanded on that. It's fine. It's fine.
So this particular unit paper has more than 18,000 citation, but though I believe that this paper could have been more elaborative, just like all good papers, like maybe FaceNet or the content is less and there are so many things left to interpretation. Same with unit as well. I mean, there are so many things like overlapping tile strategy and things like that, which was introduced with this paper, but have not actually been explained that thoroughly anywhere else. So yeah, I mean, a lot of area that could be probably dwelled into and researched over here. Next, coming to the data augmentation part. So like I mentioned before, that mainly in medical field, where the number of images that we get are relatively less, so we have to work around with them. We have to try to get more images from them. Uh, One example that we talked about was about the CellStat product, diabetic retinopathy, where we used data augmentation tasks like rotation, flipping, and things like that to generate more than 100K images from a set of around 4,000 images. So over here, if you see, we use some of the strategies, which one is shift invariance. So this is basically, let's say there's an object in the image, we are changing the position of it. There could be two kind of shift invariance. One could be horizontal, where we are displacing the or moving the particular object in the image, or one other could be vertical, where vertically we are changing the position. The other is rotation invariance, which is pretty clear by its name. Then robustness to deformations, again we can make changes and make some deformations and it would be a new image. Grayscale variation, this is our color. Random elastic deformations, again these are some of the deformations that we make that gives us a new image. So these are the ways that we can use to augment our data set. Okay, coming to the performance, so this particular unit was implemented in EM segmentation challenge, and it won by a good margin. There is something called wrapping error. If you see that this is very less. So wrapping error is basically with respect to the boundaries of let's say in this case, the nucleus. So how well it is able to come up with the boundaries. Same for pixel errors as well. So we can see with the different algorithms during that time. This was 2015 paper. So now there are a lot of variations of unit. We have double unit, we have res unit, and there are a lot of things, and they have outperformed unit as well. But this is quite old, but then also it has done well. So if you look at the intersection over union results over here, even there it has performed really well. So this PHC and this DIC HELA, these are different data sets that that it has been tested on, and we see that it has outperformed all of the known state-of-the-art solutions back then. Okay, one question I have got is, was the dataset balanced? Was the dataset balanced in DR product case? How did you overcome the imbalance? The data set was balanced because we used a similar number of images for all the different types of cases like no PDR or PDR, and then the number of images that we generated after data augmentation were also same. So in that case, I mean, let's say uh, around close to 50,000 was PDR, close to 50,000 was non-PDR. So it was definitely a balanced data set that we got. I mean, since we are doing data augmentation, we have a lot of control of having things in balance, right? I mean, if we have to just get things from while searching on net, there would definitely be imbalance where we may find something which is more and the other thing is less. So one question that I have, which one is good for classifying medical image with segmentation or without segmentation? Now, without segmentation, I'm not sure how we are going to do classify medical image. Classification could be taken in different way, right? Because if you look at the PDR example, calling it as PDR or non-PDR is one classification, whereas this is image segmentation problem where we are not classifying anything. We are actually just in terms of visualization, we are showing it on the end result, uh, the area of interest in this case, which is nucleus. So I believe these are two different topics or use cases, classification and
That is
segmentation.
correct actually. Classification and segmentation are two different problem statements. Classification is merely identifying yes or no, whether this has a cancer or not cancer, diabetic retinopathy or not diabetic. So that is just classifying. The second one is localization, where you draw a bounding box around the problem area. The third one is segmentation, where you color the region of interest with a specific color pattern. So three different things: classification, localization, segmentation. Three different computer vision applications. But yes, you can say that localization and segmentation also end up classifying because they will mark the area of interest. Okay, I hope that clarifies.
Moving to the next slide. So this is a code demo model that we have. The size of the image and the size of the convoluted image, that could differ. The size of the channels could differ. I mean, that is okay. The architecture remains the same. So that will change based upon users, uh, the image that they are getting and how they would like to further refine the system, but the architecture remains the same. So what we see over here is that we have marked each of the layers over here, right? So this is C1, the first block over here in encoder. This is C2. P1 is the max pooling over here once we go from C1 to C2. Same way we have P2 max pooling, C3, C4, C5 is our bottleneck, and then we have C6 over here. One important thing is that U7 is equal to U7 plus C3, which means is that the contextual information from the encoder block we are trying to concatenate with the upsampled information over here. So this helps us in localization, which we discussed sometime back. So same is happening for each layer. So that's why you see this concatenation over here. And then we have a final output. So this particular architecture is specific to the problem that we have, and all the different size and channels are actually what has been implemented in the code.
So one question more I had. Initially, you showed one couple of images with mask, nuclei masked. Now, if I had one mask image with all the nuclei marked in one image, would it have worked, or it has to have separate masks with different nuclei marked in different masks?
Finally, what we will do in as part of code demo is that we will all the labels or marks we will assimilate into a single image. So that, I mean, had they given all of them in one image, it would have been very easy for us, because finally we are doing the same thing as part of reprocessing. It's just because the
Okay,
data set has been plotted that way, we have to work with it and we have to assimilate into one.
got it. So you have to assemble them into one mask image.
Correct.
Okay.
Right. So moving to the next part, which is our contraction part. This is our encoder part. So we can see C1 or P1, which is our max pool, first max pool, C2, second layer of our encoder, and P2. So like this, we can probably see all the layers. Like there are 4 blocks, right, which I said. So we have over here. This C5 is our bottleneck. Next is the expansive part. So this is the U6 part where we are concatenating, right, the information that is coming, or the contextual image information that we are getting from the encoder. We are concatenating it with the information that we have as part of upsampling. So again, we have 4 blocks over here.
Audience may want to notice the fact that in the encoder you are using conv2D layer forward convolution. In the decoder or expensive path, we are using conv2D transpose. So what is meant by conv2D transpose? It is up convolution or reverse of convolution. It's inversion. So in forward path, we are doing convolution. In the decoder part, we are doing reverse inversion or transpose convolution. That's why we are using something called conv2D transpose as opposed to just conv2D in the encoder.
All right, so this is a code demo we'll go through. Just a quick glance at what we should be expecting. So these are different inputs, which is this one is a colored one and this one is black and white, but no correlation between them as such. This is a label. I mean, let's say these were individual. Let's say these are like 10 different nuclei over here. So there were 10 images or 10 masks, and we have assimilated into one. So yeah, we'll go through that in the code demo anyways. And this is our result where we have segmented the images, segmented the nucleus into. So it's pretty good, right? I mean, if you look at the original image over here, and if you look at this, it has identified the nuclei pretty well. Same key. So these are 2 different sets. So moving to the code demo part. All right. So yeah, I talked about the train and test part. Like we had one image ID. Inside that we have 2 folders. One is image, one is mask. Image has just one particular image in that, but mask has the number of nuclei that are there in the image. But again, that is a problem as well, because we have to assimilate all of them into one. That's what's happening over here. So if this part, if you see over here, right, what we are doing is that we are trying to, in this array, we are trying to find the maximum in one particular mask. We are trying to find a maximum value, which of course there will be just one nuclei in that particular frame. So that particular value it will take, and it will that will be definitely be a maximum value, and like that it will take for all the values. We have a loop over here, and then it will assimilate into a single image. That's what we see, Y train and mask. So ultimately, like if input image is 1, label should also be 1. So that's what we are trying to achieve over here. And then we have preset some our width, height, and channels, which and we are resizing our training images and mask over here. So based on the preset image width, image height. Well, so now it's actually resizing our training set. The same thing we'll do with our training set, testing set as well. We will resize it as per the uh, image height, image width, image channels, which has been defined earlier. Okay, now we are just picking a random value just to check. We are picking a random value for an image from trained data set, and then we are checking the label also for that. Why we are doing that is because earlier this is the original image from our training data set, and then this is the mask, right? It was individual images. I mean, now it has been assimilated into one, so looks pretty good. Here we are building the model that we just went through. This is our contraction part, this is our encoder part. Next is our expansive, which is our decoder part. We also, I mean, we have not marked separately the bottleneck part, but this is what it is over here. So next is, now we are compiling and we'll save the model. We are defining some checkpoints. So now once we have saved the model, we will just take a random ID or data set from our train data set, and we'll try to predict it. So this is something that we have randomly taken, and this is the label for that, and this is the result that has been generated. This is the image segmentation that has been generated. I mean, the same thing you saw in the PPT as well. So again, we have done for one more. Yeah. So there's one question: can I extract feature from segmented image in classifying image? I didn't get it actually. If you can probably further elaborate.
The question is mixing up 2-3 different concepts. So a feature extraction is happening in encoder when we apply forward convolution layers. Segmentation is the entire concept with encoder and decoder, and we are not classifying here. So we are doing pixel level classification, but not image level classification. So pixel level classification means the relevant pixels will be marked in the a differentiated color, like the yellow nuclei which is shown there. So 3 different things are being asked in one question. So they are slightly different concepts.
Okay, so these are some of the key takeaways or summary, which is the UNIT is an autoencoder architecture based on convolutional neural networks. It comprises of encoder, bottleneck, and decoder. And of course, autoencoder is a very revolutionary concept. There are a lot of advantages of that. I mean, one of the key usage of that is in variational autoencoders. Next is we are using cross entropy loss. This is a loss function for UNIT that we went through. And in almost all the examples or all the use cases that we see for medical image segmentation will definitely would have to do data augmentation because the lack of images available. So we went through some of the strategies for data augmentation. And in this session, we're able to segment nuclei of the cells by using UNIT. And this segmentation task as it was taken from Kaggle Data Science Ball 2018 competition. So these are some of the references that has been used while preparing this particular presentation. Yep, that's it. Thank you.
Okay, so audience, any final questions? So that was a nice session and a very complex, sophisticated algorithm presented in simplistic manner. So good content as well. So thank you, Amit. Well done. Audience, any final questions or feedback for Amit here? So Amit is our team lead for generative modeling team, and he's also helping us prepare our generative modeling course, and also a part of our AI product team. The product he demonstrated. Okay, so I guess there are no other questions. So this recording will be available for CellStrat Prime members or AI Lab members. And if you are interested in our product internship program to join our product team or any of our courses, reach out to us offline. And thanks once again, Amit, for taking this time and in late India hours as well. So thank you, audience, for attending and for your questions. Thank you all.
Thank you.